Hi booktube, Aaron here, hope you're doing very well. Today for Tag Tuesday, I'm going to be doing the philosophy of reading tag. It's a tag that was created about a month ago by Legdon from Reading from the Depths. I was tagged by Alan from Big Hard Books and Classics, and Legdon made this tag to celebrate Wheel Turning Day, or Shoka Dushen, which is a Buddhist holiday celebrating the Buddha's first sermon, where he taught about the Four Noble Truths, which are kind of the foundation for Buddhist thought and philosophy. And so, as a kind of echo and celebration of that, Lecton decided to create a tag about the philosophy of reading with 4 prompts. And so we'll jump right in. The first prompt is, what is your own personal philosophy of reading? And it's one of those things I find a little hard to explain or to simplify. I suppose that there's not any one single kind of reading that I prefer necessarily. I enjoy reading all kinds of things. But there are a few things, I suppose, that are common across a lot of the things that I read. Maybe not all of them, but definitely a lot of them. The first and maybe most important thing is curiosity. A sense of, just following my own intuition and reading intuitively, and letting, if I say I come across a reference to a certain book in another book I'm reading, or I hear someone talk about a book and it seems to excite me, wherever possible, I try to follow that feeling. I very much imagine myself as sort of wandering around a library, creating little connections between different shelves. That's sort of how I see a lot of my reading. The other thing then is being okay with feeling a bit perplexed in what I'm reading, not needing to understand everything the first time around, but being able to find some kind of beauty in it anyway. And then there's rereading as well, coming back to books and letting them still be a part of your life, and to reevaluate them and to see how they change for you over time, and how they show how you've changed over time. And if I was to have a single book to show you, it wouldn't necessarily have to be this copy, but just generally it would be the poetry of Rilke, of Rainer Maria Rilke, who's one of my favourite poets, maybe my all-time favourite poet. And I find him perplexing. He arouses my curiosity. His poetry goes in all kinds of different directions, and I can make all kinds of other connections with other poets, and yet he's very much his own thing as well. And he's a poet I go back to reread, and I live with, and I continually think about. He's someone who's sort of stuck in the back of my head. And so there are tons of other writers who I could use to illustrate these characteristics of my reading philosophy, but I thought he did it pretty well. This is the Edward Snow translation, which I've held up quite a few times on the channel. And I think I want to go back and read this translation of this very generous selection of his poetry. The second prompt then, another one I had a bit of trouble with, which was, when did you first come to think of yourself as a reader? And I can't really remember this. I can't really remember a time where, in a sort of decisive way, that almost like a religious conversion or something, I saw myself as a reader. I think it was a very gradual thing. I think reading was a very normal thing around me, in my family, and with some of my friends. But I wasn't a particularly strong reader. Um, I did read a fair bit, and I enjoyed dipping into books, but it's always kind of been the books themselves that live the strongest in my mind, and less the impression of me reading them. There are certain moments that stand out. I talked recently about the feeling of excitement when I first started reading Lord of the Rings. However, it's really Lord of the Rings that takes over that whole experience, and not me being the reader of Lord of the Rings. And even at that point, at the age of around 10 or 11, I'd hesitate to call myself a reader. And again, I've talked about this a fair bit in some other videos, where sort of after reading Lord of the Rings, although I did read a few things afterwards and I'd start books and put them down and then try them again, I would find it very difficult to get anything that wasn't Lord of the Rings. Uh, even other books by Tolkien, I would soon lose interest, which was unfortunate. And so for a long period after that, I definitely wasn't an active reader, and yet I still enjoyed reading, much to my own surprise. In school, we had assigned reading, and when we'd read a chapter all together as a class of one of the assigned books, everyone would, stop reading at the end of the chapter and would start off a discussion, and I would just keep reading, so that by the end of the term I'd read Of Mice and Men, or whatever else we were reading. Like, I don't know how many times, but I just kept on reading the book. And then I go on to do English A level and go on to do a literature degree. And I think part of my own reading taste coming out, and part of my own development of a reading taste, came through discovering first Ted Hughes, his collection Birthday Letters, and then wanting to find the other side of the story, and discovering the poetry and more generally just the writing of Sylvia Plath. And that was in the year before going to university, when I was about 18 years old. And then going to university, doing literature at university. I can remember whenever I was buying my assigned books, I'd have this massive list of books to read, and I would go to the bookshop or to multiple bookshops to, in my head I was trying to find deals. Really, I was spending more money than I could have, or should have. But I would always have a look around once I'd found all the books I needed, to just get something special for myself to read after I'd finished my assigned reading, so that once or twice a term I'd have something different to read just for myself. And I can remember at the end of my first year of uni, that book for me was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. And I can remember the day after finishing my last assignments, going to read this book, and I can't remember having this impression of being a reader, but looking back, I can comfortably say that by that point, I definitely was a reader who read for themselves, and for their own enjoyment. And so, yeah, I don't know if I answered that particularly well, but certainly by the point I was reading this book for the first time, I was a reader. Number 3 then is, what are some goals or hopes that you have for your reading life? And I'm sorry, but this video is going to be very, very poetry heavy, as my channel has been at various times. But I'm noticing at the moment, that over this year, that the amount of poetry that I'm reading is increasing, and my sort of poetry to non-poetry ratio. It's kind of even. It's about 50% poetry at the moment, which is cool, and I'm really enjoying. And I'm just really hoping to ride that wave, really, in all kinds of different ways. So I've just got a stack of poetry books here to sort of give you an impression. One is to go back to some relatively familiar poets that I want to know even better. Just as an example, I've got this book of Gerard Manley Hopkins. I've read a tiny selection. This is a slightly more. I think this is all of the poetry, and some of his selected letters. And so I'm really looking forward to get. I can hardly speak. I'm really quite looking forward to getting into this, and I'm sort of itching to get to it soon. And so this will hopefully be read at some point very soon. I'd like to re-examine some poets that I've read in the past. One poet I've been meaning to read for ages, or to reread for ages, would be Hölderlin, a German poet from the late 18th, early 17th century, early 19th century. And again, I feel like I didn't really get him the first time round. I was very perplexed the first time round, and I'm hoping to get to know him better and be slightly less complex or slightly less perplexed this time round. The same goes for John Ashbery as well, a slightly more recent poet. Again, very much enjoyed him when reading his selected poems. This is his self-portrait in a convex mirror. And again, hoping to get to know the poems a bit better. And then reading further afield, reading poets I've never read before from other cultures that I'm not quite as familiar with, such as these selected poems by Adonis, a Syrian poet, writing in Arabic, translated by, if I can find the translator, by Khaled Matoua. And so again, reading poetry in all kinds of directions and just riding this wave of excitement and curiosity in my poetry reading. As well as that, I have a plan for towards the end of the year, hopefully starting in October, to have this random project I've been planning for a while to read 3 Faustian books. And so I want to read Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, Faust by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, and Thomas Mann's Dr. Faustus as well. It's hopefully October, November, and December for each of those works. And sort of beyond just these 3 books, beyond this project, I love the idea of just having these random, kind of stupid groupings of books, these random projects, whether it's diving deep into a certain author or finding connections between a small handful of books and reading them together and seeing what comes of it. That's something I enjoy and something I want to do more of, and do a little more constructively in my reading life. And then finally, what is the part of your current reading life right now that is most important or exciting to you? And at the moment, one of the books that I'm reading is The Cantos by Ezra Pound. This will be a reading project for quite some time. I'm well, you can see how far through I am, and I've been reading it for over a month, so I've got a lot of time with this book ahead of me, and I think I've just hit it at the right time. in a way, it doesn't feel like reading to be reading this. It's a really odd experience to be going through, following references, finding translations for things that are in other languages in here, and all of this odd stuff that, despite of the oddness, despite of the complexity and the various illusions, there's something really stimulating to it. I'm enjoying essentially reading over Ezra Pound's shoulder and seeing what excites him. And as well as that, I think a lot of this tag has been sort of looking back at sort of the core of my reading life, and sort of reading this feels like reconnecting with a version of myself that I'd kind of parked for a little bit. It's the kind of best way to explain it. So I attempted reading this about 6-7 years ago, and was enjoying it, but just sort of ran out of time, had other commitments, had other things going on, and then didn't really seriously think of reading it again, and actually making a concerted effort until, quite recently, until this last month or so. And then coming into it, suddenly feeling an excitement that isn't just an excitement of now, but is the excitement of then, and being able to sort of move beyond that and sort of fulfill what my past self was hoping for and enjoying. I'm not sure if I'm explaining it very well, but it's a very special feeling, and it could have been any book, but I think for a kind of thing that you have to go so slowly with, for a kind of book that you kind of live in for a little while as you're working through it, there's just something about that, about the way it envelops you, and then that personal thing going on at the same time, that I'm just loving. And I doubt I'd ever find anything quite like it again, and I wouldn't want to find different things in the future, but that's just something I'm appreciating, and I'm hoping that there'll be other experiences that I'm able to appreciate for their own merits, and just as richly, and as um, um, yeah, with as much appreciation. So I think I'll leave it there with all of that vagary of what it's like reading this, but in its own way, it is exciting. So I don't think I will tag anyone in particular, but if this tag intrigues you, then please give it a go. Thanks again to Lecton for creating this, and for Alan from Big Hard Books and Classics for tagging me. And I'm trying to remember, maybe someone else tagged me in this as well. So if I forgot and missed it, then please feel free to put it in the comments and remind me. But also feel free to give this a go if you'd like to. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and happy reading. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.